Hello, hello, hello. TM24 here, and we are back with some more Marvel Snap content. We're going to do the video a little bit different today. I'm going to have the gameplay just playing right here next to me. As we're talking about the deck, the best ways to play it, some of the cards you want to be looking out for, your replacement cards, things like that. So, when I hit Infinite the other day, I just, I was just playing some games, just trying to grind a couple out, try out some new things, and I kept running across people playing ongoing decks, and I couldn't figure it out. So I wanted to try one for myself. Now, this is the one I ended up landing on. We've got Ant-Man, Luke Cage, Armor, Mr. Fantastic, Captain America, Cosmo, Warpath, Attuma, Professor X, Claw, Spectrum, and Onslaught. Now, I've seen a lot of different types of this deck. So I don't think by any means this is the one that you've got to go with. There are plenty of replacement cards. For instance, I've seen this deck run instead of Luke Cage. I've seen Colossus. I've seen Lizard. I've seen Invisible Woman, just to replace one of those 2-drop spots. I've also seen Ebony Maw instead of Professor X. I've seen Iron Man. I know Atuma's a little bit expensive, but I don't think he is, totally, crucial to this deck either. Maybe you could replace him with Shang-Chi, and I've even seen Omega Red in this deck. I'd never thought I'd see that, but I have. So, the nice thing about it is the deck's fairly cheap, and you can get, you've got plenty of options for replacement cards. So, that, first off, is great. Secondly, the cards in this deck, Mr. Fantastic, Claw especially, they can help you reach lanes that you otherwise wouldn't be able to. So I think those two are pretty nice to include, in addition to Spectrum, Onslaught, Ant-Man, and Armor. Those are probably ones that I would at least start your deck with, and then kind of fill in as you go. I landed on Luke Cage because a lot of those locations have negative power. I was running into a lot of like that Miracle Sarah deck that is running Wong and Hazmat. And I will say Luke Cage definitely saved me in one of these games. So be on the lookout for that. Cosmo's in here. I think that's pretty obvious. Cosmo is going to be used much more as a defensive tool than as a, his power. I enjoy locking lanes down, and that is why I have Professor X instead of Ant-Man. I think Attuma and Warpath are great because you can slap one of them down and then follow up with Professor X, and you've probably won that lane. And then the others, like we talked about, are pretty standard in this deck and ones that I would say that you want to make sure are in. So, how do you play this deck, right? It's, it's pretty standard, right? We've got 2 6s, 2 5s, 2 4s, 3 3s, 2 2s, and a 1-drop. So a lot of the time, you're only going to be playing 1 card per turn. So what you want to do is kind of focus on 2 lanes if you can. That's where you're going to get most of your value, is only focusing on 2 lanes. Maybe you're just throwing one because, it's a bad location for you or something like that. But ideally, you're going to attack 2 lanes. You want to fill up so that you get the most out of Ant-Man, you get the most out of Captain America, and that's kind of what you're looking to do, right? Now, you don't always have to do that. I actually ran into a game where they totally thought I was only going to play in those 2. So then they were going to try and Galactus me on that 3rd. We saw it from a mile away, and we ended up locking it down and getting that win. And you should see that one in the video here. Right next to me. So what are your lanes going to look like? Now, ideally, you've got 2 separate play lines that I would say are, optimal with this deck. On one, you've got the Professor X route, and on the other, you've got more of the, using Claw, Mr. Fantastic route. So let's start with the Professor X one, right? You've got Ant-Man. He's going to be huge. You're going to want to get him down. You're hoping to have him on turn 1. If not, you're going to kind of have to piece this together as you go, right? So Ant-Man on 1, and then on that same lane, you want to go with a 2-drop. Luke Cage or Armor, doesn't really matter. Armor, is better to protect your one drops. Luke Cage is better based on the location, so it just really depends on what you're looking for there. Now, in that same lane, what you want to do is play a 3-drop. Ideally, Captain America, Mr. Fantastic, if you're in that middle lane, is also great. So your first 3 turns going the Professor X route are going to all be played on the same lane, ideally. Turn 4 and 5 is where you're branching off. Hopefully by then you've got Warpath or you've got Attuma. You're slapping them down onto an empty lane, and then you're going to follow that up with Professor X. You're either going to have 13 or 12 power, and that's not including any additional power you could have from, Mr. Fantastic or maybe Klaw on turn 6. So that's how you're going to win that one, right? And then, turn 6, you could be Klaw, and maybe you're fitting in that Ant-Man, or if you've already got Ant-Man, a 2-drop and a 3-drop in a lane, you're slamming Spectrum, and you're winning that comfortably. Now, the other playline that I feel is really, really optimal is going with Ant-Man again. Of course, he's huge in this deck. And then your turn 2 is going to be a 2-drop. And it depends on what 4-drop you're going to have ready, but you're going to play it on a separate lane. So on one lane, you've got Ant-Man, and on the other lane, you've got a 2-drop. Then, turn 3, ideally, you're playing Mr. Fantastic or Captain America. You're hoping to get Ant-Man and Mr. Fantastic into that middle lane. So you've got Ant-Man, Mr. Fantastic in the middle lane, and ideally on the far right lane, you've got a 2-drop now. So then we come to turn 4. And if you've got Luke Cage down, you're going to need to play Warpath. If you've got Armor down, you can play Warpath or Attuma. I prefer Attuma just because he is, he's 1 extra power, but by no means does it have to be Attuma. So then we're done through turn 4, right? We've got Ant-Man, Mr. Fantastic, ideally, maybe Captain America in the middle lane. On that far right lane, we've got a 4-drop and a 2-drop. 5 comes along, and you're hoping that you've got Klaw ready to go in that middle lane because you're going to follow that up with Onslaught. So you've got Ant-Man, Mr. Fantastic, Klaw, Onslaught in the middle lane, and then in the far right lane, you've got, Armor and Attuma, or Luke Cage and Warpath, Armor and Warpath, whatever it may be. And you're going to have huge lanes. You should win easily. Now, there are a couple of unique plays that you can make, and I think he even made one in this video where a lane was locked off, right? We were only able to, our first card couldn't be played there. Now, that's a little bit tough, but we do have cards that, we can get into that lane and are going to be able to stand on their own. Attuma, Warpath. Attuma is, optimal in this case because he's 10 power and you can feel free to play on any lane. Warpath a little bit less so, but at least you're able to get there. And, ideally they win that lane for you on their own. So you've got that play that you can make. Additionally, let's say you're not hitting your draws. You've got a couple turns where you can really consider playing multiple cards. And it's probably going to be turns 5 and 6. I think up through turn 4, you're probably only going to be playing 1 card or maybe even no cards. But 5 or 6 are where you could maybe make it up. Cosmo being used as a defensive tool, and then Captain coming through as, the little bit of extra power, or Armor and a 4-drop seem optimal. Klaw and Ant-Man on 6 is also a very, very solid play. So those are kind of the plays that you can make. It does seem like a really, really fun deck, and I've had pretty good success. I was surprised by how many people were actually playing it at the infinite level. So I had to give it, I had to give it a shot myself. And I think you could tell by these games that some cards really did seem to shine for me. I think in this game that's playing right now, you'll see we're able to take on Necrosia because we have Luke Cage. So some of our tech choices really seem to work out. We're able to get that Mr. Fantastic down as well. Now, we've got our Ant-Man out there. He's a little bit stranded, but Ant-Man is also great because he can be used kind of as a, as bait, right? If you drop Ant-Man down early, they are going to assume you are you're going after that lane, right? So if you end up not playing there and they commit a whole bunch of resources, in this case, he committed Bishop and a Yellow Jacket, and I have no intention of playing there the rest of the game. You can see we're able to take Hulla with Atumo standing on his own, and we're going to be able to follow that up nicely with, I believe I play Professor X here, if I'm not mistaken, yeah. And, you know, all of a sudden we've, you know, I think we've won that lane. Or maybe, do I play Armor? Armor and Captain? I could see that as well. We have options, which is nice. You can kind of decide on what you want to do given the situation. So Ant-Man can be a nice kind of bait card. Another one is Warpath, right? If you've got him powered up at 9, they are going to assume you're not going to play on all 3 lanes, and then you can surprise them with Spectrum or something else to give you those lanes. Maybe you lock a lane early with Professor X. You can still get to that lane with Klaw, with Mr. Fantastic. So this deck, I think, has been, you know, it's kind of underrated. I think it's really, really good. I think it's, you know, it definitely struggles with the Shuri matchup. But overall, I think it's a really good one. I think you guys should try it. You can see here, we're coming through with the Spectrum. We're going to get that big dub again. But I hope y'all have enjoyed the video, enjoyed the explanation, the potential card replacements. And, you know, if you've made it this far, now would be a really good time to go ahead and hit that subscribe button, as it really does help me out. But until next time, remember, have some fun. And give this deck a try. It's worth it. I swear, you won't be disappointed. You'll get dubs just like this one. But hey, have some fun.